Hello, I'm Daisy and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing and reflecting on a theme that seems to have popped up a couple times in some of the books that I have shared on the channel, which has to do with the universal laws. So I did say that I would share this with you, and so there were many. So far I think I've come up with about 8 or so that have popped up throughout the different authors. And so I'm going to put this under universal laws to reflect on. We're not going to go through all of them. So today, this video, we're going to kind of hit the wall with the law of attraction. And I know that that has received such a bad rap with this current young generation. And I don't know if we're already transitioning to the next one, but I do know that it hit a funny bone with my son, who's now 29. And so the thing is well, there's an element missing from the famous secret. And I know that if some of you are my age, you know what we're talking about, right? So, and I really don't think that it missed the mark, but most of them are saying it's missing something, and it's missing the element of action. I thought it was clear, it's not just, dream away, but I don't want to deviate from this. I want to come back to this. So if you've got your tea, your coffee, your wine, stick around with me for a little bit. I do have some notes, and in my description, I will put some of the references. So if you want to do a little research and kind of, what's your thought on this, right? This is just reflections. I am by no means any authority on this topic, but I'm a human being and I do reflect. And I'm sure you do too, right? So in this video, some of the things you hear me say is the universal laws. What's the difference between a universal law and a spiritual law? What are the universal laws? Who came up with these laws? And who's the final authority? I don't know. So does the universe adhere to certain laws? And then the next question to ask, if it doesn't, would there be a greater disaster? So then, does it seem like it does? And so that's where you kind of try to say, well, when things are organized and there's like a rule book, a playbook, it seems that you can follow things with some type of organized structure. And does that organized structure have laws in its place that must be adhered to? I don't know. I've kind of, when I've looked up at the sky, or I look at nature minus the human element, or with the human element involved, there's an interesting aspect that I've observed. It appears to be organized chaos. That's what I seem it to be. What are these universal laws? So the ones that I wrote down that I want to throw at you, here they are. The law of divine oneness. The law of energy or vibration. The law of action. The law of correspondence. The law of cause and effect. The law of compensation. The law of attraction, which is the one we're going to look at. The law of relativity. The law of polarity. The law of rhythm. The law of gender. So those are the ones that I'll be exploring. There were a couple more. And then the spiritual laws. Now, it says here spiritual laws. What are they? All beings come from the same divine source. All beings have the same right to exist. All beings have free will. All beings have the right for spiritual freedom. Like I said, I'll put the sources in my description. Then there were these other laws. So it's are they the first ones, or are these which one are the ones that are the universal laws? So these have law of mentalism, law of correspondence. Okay, that one's repeated twice. Then the law of vibration. Okay, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of cause and effect, the law of gender. So these are according to, those are like 7. So they're like the core 7. And so going to that real quick, I'm just going to kind of jump on that one. So those were based from the Kabbalion. Okay. So going back to the original question, it's like, well, who created these laws? Where did they come from? And so down the rabbit hole I went. You can take a look at some of the noted philosophers that were mentioned, and you can look this up. Galileo Galilei and Johannes Kepler, and their period is from 1500s to the early 1600s. And then Isaac Newton, from 1643 to 1727, he wrote, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." So we ourselves right now can stand on the shoulders of giants and look. And it seems that it doesn't matter how many years have passed, we're still looking for answers, right? Sometimes I think that there's a lot lost in language and trying to say the same thing but using different words, whether it's science with their atoms and religion with their spirituality, but then religion and spirituality sometimes are at their butting heads. I think that the answer lies somewhere in between that mess, right? What's the answer to the law of attraction? So let's look to the science. Quantum physics offers a probable explanation of the feasibility of this law. One of the founding fathers of quantum physics and Nobel Prize winner, Max Planck, once said, quote, "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of the matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about the atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter." That's pretty profound. So let's go on to Einstein. "Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attraction." Imagination. And then there was Wolfgang Pauli from 1900 to 1958. He was an Australian physicist who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1945. And at one point in his life, he collaborated with the psychiatrist Carl Jung to study synchronicity. So he believed in psychokinesis, the influencing of matter by thoughts. And he was one of the first ones to consider and explore quantum physics. So going back now to a little more deeper in the science, Higgs boson, the God particle, and I'm sure some of you have heard of this, especially if you're listening to this video, if you may have definitely dove into those topics way know more than I, as I've said. And so that was definitely a big buzzword. We found the God particle. Pop, it's been inside of you the whole time, bozo. But anyway, so the Higgs boson, the study of physics has entered a new phase. However, a new phase of a different type emerged nearly a century ago as scientists and others explored the merging of science with spirituality in relationship to quantum physics. In the quantum mechanics, it is an attempt to observe matter in its smallest form, finds that everything is broken down, not into mass, but into energy, where matter can be thought as a slowed down version of energy. So there is some science, there have been some research looking into the God particle, looking at some of the advancements of, the study of the atom and coming down to the fact that it's energy. And that's a big, for me, understanding that science has come to that point where now we're talking about energy. And then what does that mean? Does that mean that does a thought have weight in it? Is that a form of energy? I am sure that you have had that experience where you're thinking of someone, they either text you, they message you, they show up the door, you run into them, something weird happens. What does that mean? Have we really looked into that? And we won't know. Was that person thinking of you also? Was the intensity that drew? Was there some type of attraction in that moment that made that action happen, that situation happen? I don't know. I'm sure that if we all take time to observe ourselves, we can get the answers we seek. And the answers are not in the books. The answers are in our observation. And then the answers are in our application. And to see how does that work. I wrote something here that I thought was worth sharing with you. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And just because we can't see these things now does not mean that a lot of these things that we can't explain are not happening. These laws that I feel like when we start on a quest and we think that there's more, because we feel that there's something more. Yes, there's some type of sense of validation when someone else asks the same questions, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's not that I'm ungrateful, but wow, I'm kind of grateful that someone else is curious just like me. Sure, a scientist is qualified, he gets paid for that, and that's wonderful. But also there are many people like you and like me that have a lot of questions. We don't spend our waking day doing this because we have other pursuits or we do other things, but nonetheless, our observations are just as valid. The things that you see, and if you document it and you keep a journal, and then you can talk about these things. It's just that we sometimes just overlook some of these things. But these laws, are they a belief system? Do we just say, wow, look at that? It feels like we know that there's something that's kind of a playbook. I feel that inside of us, we all know that there is some type of structure, some type of very clear and just perfect. And because of, I guess, our linear way of thinking here, we want everything to be kind of in a little book with 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, but it's not the case. That's not the case. Like I mentioned earlier, I believe that life is organized chaos. And what a masterful creator that is to do that. And then what is this that we can have this experience here? And what is the me that's having this experience? And then my desire, why is my desire so unique about the things I want and the desires that you have about the things you want? And then what is our ability to attract this? And what makes this person able to attract what they want and this person not? And is it very predictable? Could these things be predicted? That if you do this, if you think this, if you do that, can you crawl yourself out of wherever you're at, and can you make a conscious effort that you want to do more, be more, experience more? And I suppose that it's that hunger and the will that separates those that do and those that don't. It is elementary to understand that you are bound to these mechanisms, no matter if you believe them or even know they exist. So it's that concept of, okay, so these philosophers and other sages have talked to us about these laws. And we're going right now specifically to the law of attraction. But, so whether we believe in it or not, they are at play. They're affecting things. We are affecting it. It's affecting us. And it's like this incredible thing bouncing back and forth. And either it's organized, or we live in that organization, or we just haphazardly just exist, but it's still happening. And then there's the element of free will. So we have this free will. So whether we believe in these laws or not, they're at play. They are at play, and there are consequences to our actions. And it's like the thing is like, well, if you have a thought about doing something, or you have a thought that you're not going to do something, there's still a result of the action, non-action. It's still happening. And all this free will is either getting us, towards something that we want or away from something we're afraid of, but we're either moving towards this or away from, and it's just happening. And according to quantum physics, the universe is made up of energy that is vibrating at different frequencies. So when we think about that, which could possibly hurt my brain thinking about that, it's like, well, what's the difference between the molecules of what's vibrating here? Why can't I see that? Versus, the denseness of my being, versus the fluidity of water, versus the sound, So all of these things, whether it's solid state or sound or space, science can take it and quantify it into some form of energy, a solid state of energy versus a sound energy. And then what about the thought energy? I'll keep coming back to that one. So the basis of the law of attraction is saying that if you focus on something long enough, hard enough, visualize it, put the feeling in it, on all these things, your main focus, you will draw it to you. So basically, if you focus on a positive life, you will draw to you that. And if you focus on a negative life, you will draw to you that. So regardless of whether you believe in it or not, and then you say, well, life is miserable, I'm miserable, and that's what well, then obviously you're sunken in it. That's what it is. And if you believe that life is great, and so it's like, it's either way, you're right. Your thoughts become things has been scientifically tested. One study showed that negative thoughts, including worry and fear, cause people to become sick, whereas positive thoughts of healthiness can keep people healthy. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. This can be proven by the placebo effect. People that are given a fake pill claim that they feel better because they think that they are receiving treatment. And this only demonstrates that thoughts can actually make you feel better, as long as your thoughts are positive. Positive effects will come soon after, just like taking a placebo makes you feel better because you think you are getting better. And then there was another article, Sony created a robot that creates actions due to people's thoughts. This is not just a correlation, but rather a directly causing the movement. A person wearing a skull cap that measures electronic impulses can think about moving his arm, and then the robot would actually move his arm. So this is because the electrical impulses generated by the thought are transferred into making the robot move its arm. And that explains the science showing that thoughts become things. And that's one way to look at that. But to wrap this up, in the biblical sense, here are a couple excerpts from the Bible. So from Matthew 21:22, and all things whatsoever you shall ask in prayer, believing you shall receive. And these are pretty much the three components of the law of attraction: ask, believe, and receive. And I'll leave you with the last one from Matthew chapter 9, verse 29. According to your faith shall it be done to you. And whatever that faith is, whatever you believe, that is true, and there's no denying that. So I want to just reflect on the law of attraction. What does it really mean? Who thought about it? Who is the authority on the law of attraction? Can we say that science has already proven? All I could tell you is that whatever research you do, whether it's the Ho'oponopo, ancient cultures who gathered around and had a sense that there's some structure in this craziness. I mean, like, what holds the planets together? in its orbit so perfect. They've come up with all these laws, the universal laws. You look it up somewhere, it's 7. You look at somewhere else, 12. Some have 14. And what's the difference between that and the spiritual laws? And I know there's a lot of research. Some people, it doesn't mean anything. It may be just a conversation that you have over a cup of tea or wine. Maybe it lasts only 3 minutes. For some of us, we think of it all the time. We think about it when we do things. We are amazed when we look at the perfection of how a leaf just falls and glides, or the veins on the leaf. I think about the idea of playing a game. And this is just staying at the theme of the law of attraction. Because what makes one person who achieves and attracts all their dreams any different than someone who doesn't? And there's one thing I've learned is that whatever you're searching, there's clues. There's always a crumb somewhere. Try to look for the crumbs, and there's going to be the answers. Isn't there a saying to say, believe half of what you see and nothing from what you hear? So don't believe anything I'm saying here. Just do your research or seek the answer within. Going back to the idea of playing a game. So we're thrown into this existence. Where's the rule book? I mean, we're born under families, and there's like these cultural do's and don'ts, right? And then many of us are thrown into schools. Again, more cultural do's and don'ts. And then there's your governmental do's and don'ts. Lots of, basic do's and don'ts of morality. And what about life? Like, to be an incredible human being, to experience where's that? Where's that book? I know that there's the book of virtues, but do any of our youths know about the virtues? Did anybody discuss that? And why should we pursue them? I think I have more questions in this video than I do have answers. But that's why it's under my reflection playlist. So reflecting on that, if you and I are going to play a game, I would say, hey, John, Mary, let's go play a game. Here's the rules. Here's the objective. Do we have an objective? Where are the rules for this game called life? And does it mean, who's to say, like, the objectives? Your objective is different than my objective. Who's to say that you're wrong in your pursuit? Who's to say that your life isn't beautiful already? But if you have some pursuits, whether it's material, spiritual, physical, are there some things that we must follow? What is that? And that's kind of where I'm stuck on this law of attraction. It all requires something, but it's not one person alone. And I do believe that we must harness and find the joy for life. We must be connected with something pure and beautiful within ourselves. and that it requires the law of attraction. I believe it is about focus. I believe that you really need to know what you really want. Do you really know what you really want? Are you willing to sacrifice for what you want? Are you willing to pursue the things you want? Are you willing to do everything you need to do to get that thing? How focused are you to the exclusion of all other thoughts are you in your mind? So I ask myself what it is that I want to attract more of. I want to attract more moments of inspiration. I want to attract just those glimpses of happiness, even if it's microseconds of bliss. I am very grateful for all that I have. Could I want more? I could, and I do. I also want to know that whatever God has planned for me now, that I can do it, that I have the courage to do what's next. And I don't know if there's many other people. I don't know how old you are, whether you're young. I remember being young, and it's like I look at what did I attract in my life, and I don't know what mindset I was when I was attracting to be a policewoman, or what was the mindset that drove us to be in a situation that we opened up a program to help people in foreclosure in the previous recession. What was the situation that drove us to a small town where I became mayor? And now I'm here. I've been on social media since 2005, since Yahoo 360, just sharing ideas and my own reflections on my blog. But here I am. I'm breaking through the YouTube and trying to define what is this that I really am doing. Is it just what am I attracting? So the question that we should ask is the law of attraction a law? Is it something that we know is there, whether we believe it or not? Can we say that the things that surround us is an example of the things that we have attracted through our thought? And yes, we could say that, I look at some of these things and these were thoughts in other people's mind. And how did I play a role in that thought? Well, what is it that I'm thinking now that is going to attract whatever it is that I'm trying to attract? So you see, I think I'm left with more questions. The questions about what is my current belief system? Is that belief system? What do I believe in? What do you believe in? What do you want? And then defining all that. It's like the law of attraction is just one component, which seems to be layered by thoughts. But in our waking hours, how many thoughts come into our head? And what state of life must we have to have a singular thought exclusive of things that are bouncing at us at any given moment? And what are we giving residence to in our beautiful mind? Is it worthy? And are we addicted to a certain way of thinking, whether it's so-called negative or dark thoughts? And where do they come from? Are we like receiving things, or are we also sending things out? How do we know the difference? And like one of the greatest that have walked this planet, according to your faith, it will be done. I'm going to leave it at that. Tell me what you think. How do you feel? about all this? Leave me your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for spending time with me.